Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the FUT Weekly Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to week 12 of the FUT Weekly Podcast. I am joined on this episode, as you'd expect, but in a new location, by 𝗪𝘅𝗍𝘀. Hello.
Yes, I'm in a mysterious hotel room. I haven't been kicked out by my wife, fortunately. But the camera quality may be a little bit poorer, but hopefully the takes are just as hot.
Yeah, just as high definition. We will, actually, do you know what? We're going to have some more general discussion because it's a bit of a low content week, but there is some stuff around, and I think we should do pound for pound. But first of all, we'll start by picking last week's pound for pound. It's a bit of an interesting one because actually we had 2 listener nominations last week, so I think we're just going to pick between those because that seems like the right thing to do. And the 2 nominated players were the Thunderstruck 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘁, Italian midfielder, women's player, and Adrian Thomason, Thunderstruck. So yes, who are you going to be casting the deciding vote for of those 2?
Well, I think I said it last week when we got the nominations in that I'd used 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 and really liked her. You know, from a FUT Weekly perspective, you can call her Groggy. From a UK bakery perspective, you can call her Greg's. But she's just brilliant, like all the way around. So, like, there's something about her, and it's kind of made me annoyed I didn't do the Rodrigo de Paul showdown SBC because he's also got technical in midfield, which is just it's something you can use with 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 to attack with that not a lot of midfielders have. I think because there's such a penchant for tiki-taka plus that actually the ability to kind of drive with the ball from midfield is something we're not seeing a lot, even with like 4-5-1 formations or 4-4-1-1. She just brings something a bit different, like really good all the way around.
Yeah, she gives me that kind of 𝘵𝘬𝘬𝘬 vibe, to be honest, which is nice because 𝘵𝘬𝘬𝘬 is, of course, not in the game this cycle, but she had a version which had, I think it was actually press proven plus maybe, but had technical base, which was really good. So yeah. Right, let us move on to our nominations for pound for pound. And yeah, you can start us off, Josh. Who are you going to go for this week?
Yeah, so we're actually recording this later than I think we've ever recorded a podcast before. It's meant that yes, it's meant that 6 p.m. content's come out, and there's a card that I used right at the beginning of the game and used it for like the first few weeks as well, and absolutely loved. And it is Yui Hasegawa, and she's just come out as part of a trio of Manchester City women that have all come out as like a 3-part SBC where each of the 3 segments gives a player, but completing all of them gives a premium gold players pack, which is interesting because I'm not sure we've seen that before. But this Hasegawa, the segment for her alone is 45,000 coins. I think it's an 86 rated squad. And she's been given tiki-taka plus to go along with base play styles, low-driven, incisive, pinged pass, intercept, technical, press proven, and inventive. Like, if you could hand-pick a bunch of play styles to go for a midfielder, I mean, just unbelievable. And I think maybe some people will be off-put by the fact she's only got 70 physical, but she does have 88 stamina and 81 aggression. So whilst a stiff breeze may knock her over, that 81 aggression does mean that she'll like jump passing lanes with base intercepts as well. She will kind of be more physical, even if she's not very good at it. And then the fact that she's got the stamina to keep going kind of, I think, covers the fact she doesn't have relentless, but she's fast, 85 pace. She's got brilliant passing, 92 vision, 92 short passing, 91 long passing. Her dribbling's just all round incredible. Defending is like 90 interceptions, 90 defense awareness, 88 stand tackle. And I don't think you necessarily want anything outside of that with her. Just an unbelievable player, obviously with 5-star skill moves because of the promo. And maybe a bit of like a promo saver for me because I've not really been that engaged with this as a promo, but I'm absolutely doing this SBC.
Yeah, she's a great shout. And actually, I think has a bit of the Greggy about her, perhaps, but maybe just that
it's more
next level up
vibes.
Potentially. Yeah, I was going to say maybe slightly more defensive, actually. You're right, but Greggy has the intercept base, I think, too, right? So yeah, no, that is a great shout. And actually, you know, I probably would have gone for her, to be honest, but I've had a backup in reserve because when he came out, I was looking at the GG rating and thinking, and the price, and thinking that is a pound for pound, and that is the Alexandro. He's 5'5", which is kind of fun, but obviously not necessary at all at centre back. But where he kind of stands out is obviously those defensive playstyles. That's why he has such a good rating. He's got aerial fortress. He doesn't have slide tackle, but that doesn't matter so much. He's got anticipate and intercept. He's got block, and he has jockey plus. And the only kind of that's a useful playstyle. I was going to say the only less useful playstyle is perhaps long ball, but actually still kind of useful at centre back anyway. But I really like the fact he's got the jockey plus. I think, as I've been saying on the podcast for a bit, I think jockey plus is super, super underrated as a playstyle plus. And actually, when you look at the players that have jockey plus, the best centre backs, it's kind of, unless you're going to pay for like Maldini or something, or Chiellini, it's basically him at the top end, to be honest. So if you want to try Jockey Plus and see how good it is, then I think he's a really good shout. He doesn't have as good pace as some of the centre backs I've been using with Jockey Plus, because he's 81 pace. And his pace split isn't great. It's got quite low acceleration, but that can be kind of helpful, I guess, as he's lengthy. But I think he's still going to be a super effective defender. For 17k, and I think being really good on the ball as well. I think he's got 90 short passing and 87 long passing. Really good strength and aggression. I think just a well-rounded player. Obviously the links aren't amazing because he's Lille, isn't he? But he's Brazilian, and there are plenty of world tour Brazilians knocking around. Just think he's really solid and will be someone that potentially fits in an Evo at some point in the not too distant future, being 86 rated actually. That is my nomination, and I think
it's probably an interesting one to talk about from like a GG perspective, because it is very high, like being the fourth highest rated defender with that, obviously outside of evolutions, is super high. But it's worth saying that like with a shadow, he ends with 92 sprint speed at lengthy, which is like very, very good for a centre-back. His dribbling is good enough in the places it needs to be, i.e. in reactions. Like his balance maybe could be a little bit better in agility. Passing-wise, whilst he only has long ball as a passing play style, he has very good passing stats. Then his defending stats are all super high as well. Like I think he had a team of the season card last year, I want to say, and he was super high rated on GG rating last year as well. So clearly just someone with the kind of build that like works really well. I think 6'3" is a good height. It's not like too cumbersome, and then has all of the defensive play styles outside of slide tackle, which I think is probably a thing that bumps his rating, his GG rating more than anything else. Like so many of the really good centre backs in the game they tend not to have anticipate, intercept, and jockey, and then definitely wouldn't have block on an aerial fortress as well. So he's kind of covered off everything. I think the only thing really he's missing is quick step that would be kind of rated a little bit higher, just because it does help, especially with lengthy centre backs, to get them going. Yeah,
well, also, you look at Maldini. He's actually missing block, so he technically probably has worse play styles. That how much is he? 3.7 million Thunderstruck Maldini. So obviously the stats are better, and that's why he has a higher GG rating than Alexandro. But his strength and aggression are worse, to be fair. So it's an interesting one. I think he's just very underrated. I think at 17k you might as well stick one in the club. I feel like as I said, Evo potential in a bit could work out really well. Let us then have a sort of look across the other content we've had, and actually maybe we start with the campaign itself. So we've had Joga Bonito, which is I think kind of a fun idea as a concept. It's funny because typically we get a kind of swathe, yeah, I guess so, of whatever. Anyway, 5-star skill players for FUT Birthday, right? So it kind of feels like this is an early version of FUT Birthday to some extent, because they're all getting 5-star skills. I guess you get 5-star week FUT players in that as well. Which, as someone who likes to do skills and, used to collect skillers is kind of a fun idea. But it's been notably a bit of a lull in terms of I guess, kind of interesting content versus Black Friday, which was obviously, very much something they were focused on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come off the back of probably the most full-on weekend of the cycle, and they've kind of longed that week out as much as they can. And have kind of all of those cards have gone out of packs now because there's so many specials in packs at the time, and you've got usually a really good menu grind. We still have remnants of that menu grind there, but I think a new promo is always going to struggle. And in a game that feels more and more competitive in that respect, actually, the addition of 5-star skills, I don't really know that 5-star skills are as overpowered this year as maybe they have been in the past. Like back in the days of like 𝗪𝘀𝘀𝘀 or 𝗪𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀, however you wanted to look at them, like you could, if you do 5-star skill moves, it would make a big difference to like how you could play in game, but also people were chasing fun rather than necessarily wins, and so having the ability to do those 5-star skills was something that was like desirable. I don't think it steps on the toes too much of FUT Birthday, because FUT Birthday has tended to sway more towards 5-star in recent years. It's one of those promos where, and I've started to see some people talking about it, where because it's a new promo and because it's come after Black Friday, there's that feeling of we don't need promos every week. I'm kind of like glad that we do have something, because I also think if there was no promos, people would be really frustrated. And also, having no Brazilian league and doing a Joga Bonito promo also feels like a little bit, I don't know, it's like there's a whole raft of people that are missing out. But having said that, I think there are some really fun cards in here. And also a few kind of like upgrades to meta cards. I'm looking at like De Jong, for example, like having a special version of him with 5-star skill moves and upgraded stats. Obviously has lost Tiki-Taka Plus and has gone to Incisive Plus. There's a few Evo busters in here, 𝘬𝘃𝗍 being probably chief among them. Obviously, with the change from having Trickster Plus is kind of the benefit of not having an Evo 𝘬𝘃𝗍 and having this one. I also chose Matheus Cunha in what was effectively the 𝘬𝘇a Pina evolution, and I put him in at like 555. I hadn't looked at any leaks or anything of who was coming. So then, of course, we get a special Matheus Cunha on the other side of it with Finesse Plus Overload Driven. And then also, like, it's also come with a week where we've had the first upgrades to Thunderstruck cards. So we're still kind of living in that world. We've also had the Scream cards have had their second week of upgrades. They've still got them at the moment. And also now we've got probably the most anticipated Player of the Month SBC that we've had in the entire game in 𝘬𝘇a Pina. So I think it's been fighting for attention in some respects. And so it's kind of started from a pretty low point. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is one of those where in like a Christmas quiz in years to come, we'll go, name me a promo that was only in the game once, and this will be one of them. Can you tell I'm writing the questions for the Christmas quiz at the moment?
Well, actually, a good one might be, what was the campaign in which 𝘭₪𝘬𝘦 returned to the FIFA/FC franchise? Because obviously he's back, which is kind of exciting as someone who spent about 6 hours trying to snipe his man of the match, and I don't know, I think it was at uni, so probably 2015 maybe or something like that. He was, that's the kind of thing I did at uni. Enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, no, the 𝘭₪𝘬𝘦 is fun. I enjoyed his versions in the past. I don't think I'm going to be spending 600k on him. That's quite a lot.
Did you surprise me?
Yeah, considering he has no pace boosting playstyles, which is something worth noting. But his stats are pretty good actually in the areas that they need to be good for someone like him. And inevitably had game changer. I was going to say could have been inventive, but obviously he was known for actually scoring from the 𝘂𝑛𝑛𝑒𝑙𝑎s, not just hitting the ball without sort of fit. So makes sense. We also had Pablo Aimar as well, right? Who came with Tiki-Taka, which is kind of fun because that's quite a meta playstyle. There was also a random Fabregas, right? Which is kind of unexpected. I think he's been added to the database, but not actually released. Is that right? I don't
I don't know. I've seen some screenshots of him in game, so there's potential that he might actually be like about. But if he is, he's incredibly rare.
Yeah, there was another player I think added as well, just as a regular hero, who eludes me at the moment. But actually, the other thing is that we got 𝘠𝘓𝘬𝘬 back in the game, which was slightly unexpected. But he's just come in as a silver. So there've been a few new players just added to the database over the last couple of days, which I guess can be nice for future content. Obviously, he's a 39 pace cam at the moment, but give it about 10 evolutions and you might have 70 pace. And I'm sure they'll release some kind of promo content around him at some point. So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting couple of days, and in a weird sense like that. I feel like, I don't know, it's not super exciting and kind of fast paced like we saw at Thunderstruck. But I think actually, from my perspective at least, as someone who likes 5-star skillers, there have perhaps been players that I'm actually interested in, and there are some lower rated ones who don't have playstyle pluses, which I think is kind of interesting from an evolution perspective, because actually for me, one of the worst things is a low rated player with a bad playstyle plus, right? Because then they don't have that future upgrade potential. But there are a few good ones, and obviously they've already got 5-star skills, which is good. So if they're an attacking player, that's a benefit. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of have struggled to know what to feel about it. But I guess, it's here. And perhaps more excitingly, as you mentioned before, I was going to say more excitingly, I don't know whether either of us were particularly using 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝗀𝘀 that much, but I guess that is kind of
definitely not.
I don't know who she is. But yeah, I think her arrival as a player of the month SBC today has caused a fair bit of excitement. And actually, why don't we take a break there and we'll come back and discuss the player of the month Pina after the break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello and welcome back after the break. So, as promised, let's talk about 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝗀𝘀. I don't think I expected to be using 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝘀𝘀 as a tease for coming back in after the break, but before this cycle started. But yeah, obviously, for those who have literally been living under a rock, 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝘀𝘀's base item has been extremely popular this cycle, and I think we've talked about before on Game Day podcast why that might be, but I still think it remains a little bit of a mystery to some extent. I do think her height is a huge factor, right? She's only 5'3". But anyway, she's got a player of the month. And the interesting thing about this player of the month is that the stats are boosted, but it's not huge. It's +1s, +2s. But they've swapped the playstyles. So she's now Finesse Plus with low driven base rather than low driven plus with Finesse base. And I guess the other thing to say is this is a 500k SBC and the gold Pina is 7k. So it's a big commitment, and the squads are fairly high rated as well. It's not lots of lower rated squads. So, I mean, maybe we start by just saying, is she worth it?
No, she's clearly not worth it. This is absolutely ludicrous. It feels like they swapped the playstyles around to give her Finesse Plus instead of Low Driven Plus, effectively to try and make it worth it. Because she's had a special card in the game from quite early on. It was a Cornerstones, I think. And that in itself wasn't a huge upgrade to her base card. I think it was like 2 or 3 pace, 2 shooting, 2 passing, 1 dribbling. And that's been like 1 million coins, because apparently that extra like +1 makes all the difference, and it's nothing to do with the fact that it's rare. And so we now have this like player of the month version that, if you compare it to the cornerstones, it has 1 less pace, 1 less shooting, 1 more defending, and 1 more physical, but has like critically has the play styles swapped round. And it's fair to say it's been pretty highly anticipated since she won. I think she could have won last month as well and ended up losing out, but has won this month. And there is a strong possibility she's in Team of the Year as well, by the way. I just want to like pre-warn and get that in there. So I am surprised it took this long for it to come out. We knew that she'd won it, I think, last Thursday. Maybe even earlier than that, and obviously during Thunderstruck. And on Friday we kind of like, we had a card and what the card was going to be. They released Lamine Yamal's Player of the Month on Friday, and then have waited all the way until content today to give us this Player of the Month card. And that's probably just separating out content a little bit, but is it worth 500k? No, it's 2 86 rated squads, I think 4 87s and an 88. And I just think that you should just use the base one, right? Especially at 86 rated. Like, genuinely, how long do we think it's going to be before you can Evo the base 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝗍? Like, Christmas? Maybe just after? Is it worth putting 500,000 coins into a card that, essentially, if you don't want people to see you as a ratty player, you don't do this SBC, right? You just use a base one, because then you're just a poor ratty player, right? Who doesn't have enough fodder to go after the Player of the Month. So, like, will it be good? Yeah, of course it will. Of course it will, because her base card is ridiculous for no apparent reason. And so, I also think it's probably worth saying that we're at the point where, if you really care about your evolutions, you could have evolved a better 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝗀 by now. Not using her, and maybe the player item itself has some kind of special boost, but you could have chosen a short attacking player, given almost exactly the same playstyles, potentially even better playstyles, because one of Pina's is dead ball, and so you could definitely have added something better there. You could maybe argue game changer, although I know that that's got its supporters in the box, and got someone with much higher pace, like much better dribbling and passing. Shooting, I'm not sure if you'd have been able to get much better than where it is, and definitely better physical, because Pina's got even this Player of the Month's got 77, 78 stamina with no relentless, so she should get tired. There is part of me that wonders if actually it's the lack of pace that makes her so good, because her touch is then much better, because she's not traveling as far in terms of like the distance she's moving. So I don't know. If you want to go and do, like, if you are chasing the meta, then sure, knock yourself out. This is the thing you've been waiting for. Go and do it. But I mean, for me, 500,000 coins on an 87 rated, 80 pace female La Liga Player of the Month card. It's not the one, is it? It's not unless it was Bonmati. It's not the one.
Yeah, no, sorry. Well, the other thing I was going to add is like the thing she is missing, which you would get on Evos as well, is the advanced forward role, which doesn't have plus or plus, right? And I mean, I think that's been one of the things that's most noticeable about playing against her, is now we have so many attackers with the plus, or even the plus. Like, they do make much better runs than 𝘬𝘬𝘀𝗀𝗀 does, and actually people who are using her are probably partly influenced by how often she's used by pros, who of course really do a lot of manual movement, and almost prefer players who are more static for that reason. So I think there's like a bit of she does good things on the ball, and that can often lead to people thinking that she's better than she is, because her off the ball movement is not particularly great, I don't think. So I think, I think it's obviously a wildly overpriced SBC, but I think it is going to be quite interesting to see how much you see the SBC, like when you're playing, right? Because theoretically, there are a lot of people out there who are like just Pina super fans and just desperately want the better version of Pina in their opinion, and if they prefer finesse plus, then maybe they would kind of go and do it. So it'll be interesting to see. And also, this is a sort of debate that we could have quickly. I mean, maybe we talk about it a bit more on the gameplay podcast, but would you say that Finesse Plus is, having Finesse Plus and low driven base is the superior combination at the moment?
I think so, yeah, because I think Finesse Plus is just so dangerous from distance. And I don't think there is... I think because it pops up, it feels like there's a massive difference between low driven plus and normal low driven. And maybe this is a bit of like precision shooting tax talking, because like with precision shooting, your shots are quicker anyway. And so like whilst you may get a low driven shot off quicker with more power if you have the playstyle plus, if you're using precision, there's only so much faster it actually makes it. And so maybe there's something in that. But to me, it's the low driven finesses like in the box, which are super overpowered at the moment. Like the keepers just don't seem to be able to react to them. And then outside of the box, you want Finesse Plus. So that's why I think Finesse Plus is better than low driven at the moment. I know that there are people have different opinions on this. And maybe because you're probably playing her at striker, you would say how many times are you actually going to shoot from outside the box. But I think just having that as a weapon that you can use, yeah, for me. And again, I think that's the only reason they can kind of justify this price is because there's been the change in the playstyle plus.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would agree that it's better. I think it is kind of fairly marginal, and there's probably going to be some personal preference, and as you say, like precision bias involved. Because I do agree, like regular low driven and precision shooting is really quite strong already, whereas finesse doesn't feel as strong. I think. So yeah, I think I'm interested actually. I was thinking you were saying about kind of building a version of Pina. I think that is probably. I mean, we've had that. Pina inspired Evo expire, but I definitely think there's going to be opportunities again to do that. I think that is the Evo, which is called something like the Perfect Curl. I think that might still be available. If it isn't, I apologize, but it was until very recently available. And that obviously is really good for, you can pop that on sort of like a player that if you maybe haven't used it yet, it's free, and you can pop that on a player who is perhaps like her kind of build, and then look to kind of evolve a lower rated player with finesse as the sort of kind of, I guess, overriding any future playstyle pluses that they might gain. Although a little tangent is that they actually put their first, did you notice this? They put the first ever playstyle plus limit out in an Evo recently. That trick, weirdly, the Trickster Evo, right, for silvers. They did max playstyle pluses 1. Is it max playstyle pluses? Yeah. Wait, max playstyle plus is 0, I should say. And then they did it again for the recent Gauntlet Evos that just this evening I noticed. So maybe it does suggest like a slightly different approach, which would prevent people doing as many chains, perhaps, because you can't block worse playstyles with other playstyles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, potentially. Obviously, like so there's the Silver Skiller, which is the one that you can do for free that's just in Evos. And I suppose if I was to try and see it from a favorable point of view, you'd say that the reason they're blocking out the Playstyle Plus is because the whole point of the Evo is to make somebody a 5-star skiller with Trickster. That's the whole point of the evolution. So to block it out would be a weird thing to do. Again, that's being quite kind. And like, I don't necessarily... That would make a lot more sense in my head if the skill moves and the Trickster didn't all come in the final level and it wasn't max 74. And like, do you know what I mean? There's that kind way of viewing it maybe would be a bit different. And then in the Gauntlet 6 objectives, we've had the Brazil Silver Skiller, which is, I think, effectively the same. Only it has an insane overall boost by comparison. So the Silver Skiller in Evolutions, I think, is plus 15 overall, up to a max of 74. The Brazil Silver Skiller is plus 40 overall, to a max of 74.
It's just going to make you hit the silver cap, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it just guarantees you're going to get 74 rated, and it has to be from Brazil. So, I mean, that instantly like kills a lot of the players you might have used in it, and it essentially like limits the number that you would actually use down to such a small level, because you don't want to put in like a bronze player that's going to get all the way up to 74 but only get like plus 20s and plus 15s. So yeah, interesting. I'm trying not to worry too much, I think, because they're effectively the same Evo, that until we see it elsewhere, I'm trying to be a little more, I don't know, trying to not worry that like the player, my 55 rated players that I've put the right playstyle plus on are now going to be, not allowed to go into Evos moving forward. It probably worth saying on the subject of Gauntlet 6 evolutions that you can get. One of them is the positional excellence Evo.
Juicy.
And so your pound for pound nomination, you talked about, he might be a bit difficult to link. You don't need to. You could just get the positional excellence card type evolution, and he will get full chem. And obviously he'll give the normal chemistry, so he'll give a Brazilian chem link, and is it Lille that he's from, and French league. But he himself will get 3 chemistry. So like quite a nice reward. That's the second time I think they've given that out now. Yeah,
it's a really strong. I think it's actually a really strong like reward just generally, that Evo, because the if you look at the sort of pricing of players who aren't easy to link, they often are lower, right? And you're just kind of immediately upping that player's value by slapping that on and allowing them to be in your team on full chem. And when you consider the desirability of players who do instantly get full chem, that is like really good. And actually, the Gauntlet rewards otherwise, I wouldn't say necessarily super appealing. There's like a first touch Evo, which I just mentioned. And I said that had max PS plus 0, but that's obviously just because you don't get anything else from that, so that makes sense. There's also Shadow Striker plus, which is a max 86, so that's quite good. Although we have talked before about how Shadow Striker plus isn't necessarily super desirable, and sometimes the runs they make without that are actually better. But still, it's nice to see a roll plus max 86. And then you mentioned the Brazil silver skiller. Was there anything else sort of generally around the Joga Bonito content that you wanted to cover before we kind of move on to talking about things more broadly? I think
probably worth pointing out before we move on from Gauntlet, like there was a lot of talk about when they changed the way that Gauntlet rewards were working, where you didn't need to win everything to kind of get all the rewards, but you could like finagle it. I think they've now got it to a good spot where there's like the bonus reward and like the main rewards. They've given you a 12 Brazil silver pack for playing 1 in Gauntlet. So that if you don't have a player for the Brazil Silver Skiller Evo, maybe now you do. Coin rewards in Gauntlet again still, I think, is interesting. And instead of an 83/10, it's an 86/3 for playing 12 in the Gauntlet now. So, like, does seem like there's maybe a little bit of progression there in some respects. We also got a Flash Rush event today. True, which was for the group reward is you get Zaha, and there's 1500 SP in there. Another 4-week season, so that's still 500,000 coins and 1,000 FC points. So maybe because we've all got so many FC points, they're trying to drain them a little bit quicker. Would be a cynical way of looking at it. And also we've not had much SP at all, so that 1500 is welcome. There's not a lot in terms of rewards from it, like in terms of packs, but the Zaha itself is kind of fun, like a decent-ish stats. It's fine. It's been fine. I kind of like the
do you know what I was kind of thinking about? I was like, I've not been that as engaged, and I'm like, well, we just have Black Friday, which is probably one of the most engaging campaigns that you'll actually ever see in Ultimate Team, like genuinely, because it's like nothing else happens at that kind of frequency, right? So maybe it's unsurprising that like, naturally you're going to be less engaged in what comes after that, because it isn't inevitably as engaging, but there's still some good stuff around to kind of keep you ticking. I have to say, I think that the Evos have been really disappointing over the last week, though. Like, none of those have been that compelling, which is a shame. But we did have good ones that are still around, so I guess people can be fiddling around with those, which maybe stops them being too overwhelming. There's still games to play on those as well, probably for people. So, yeah, makes sense. Just actually,
I'm not sure if people do have games to play on their Evos, especially not ones that are more than maybe 5 days old at this point because of the event we got at the end of Black Friday.
That's actually a good
point. First to 2 goals in a friendly mode. What were they thinking?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was actually going to come on to that because we're going to talk about modes in a sec. But actually, one thing I want to just wrap up on is looking ahead. We've got something probably coming on Friday. I think this is just probably going to be 1 week.
I think it's another new promo on Friday.
Another new promo even, so that's kind of interesting. And then probably winter wildcards, that would make sense in terms of timings. And it's just worth saying, I think, for people who are watching coins and maybe have valuable players, but prices do tend to really drop over Christmas. It's I think it's kind of underrated as a kind of market crash. They really do dip. So if you kind of are looking to protect your coins, it's quite a good time to be selling high value players. And I guess, just pointing that out.
Yeah, and I think we're maybe seeing the beginning of the kind of mass team of the year pack holding beginning. Just the tradable prices of some of these Joga Bonito cards just look a little out of whack, I think, with everything else. I'm thinking mainly about Murillo. Seems incredibly expensive, nearly 250k for... He's all right, 83 pace, 87 defending, 87 physical, but I don't know that he's that much better than a lot of other centre-backs that are much, much cheaper. Kind of similar with 𝗟𝗶𝘀 as well, although, 𝗟𝗶𝘀 has a bit more positional flexibility and he's got good passing and dribbling, so he's maybe a little unique in that factor, but if you just took him as a centre-back on its own, I don't know that 100k is that wild. So, it's interesting from that perspective. And then I think as well, in terms of content we have talked a lot about Pina's Player of the Month SBC, but we did also get Lamine Yamal. Who'd have thought, if we'd have said at the beginning of the cycle, Lamine Yamal's going to get a Player of the Month and no one will be talking about it because everyone's talking about 𝘵𝗫𝗄𝗃, I think you'd have laughed. But I thought that was a really interesting Player of the Month SBC this early in the cycle, which effectively is they made the decision to make this one not very good. They could have done a 𝘵𝗫𝗄𝗃 and made it 1 million coins because he has his it's not called Road to the Knockouts.
Yeah.
I mean, prime time, UCL prime time. That went from Technical Plus to Finesse Shot Plus and is 1.3 million coins. Also, compared to the Player of the Month, that has slightly more pace and shooting. And again, the Player of the Month has +1 in defending and physicality. So exactly the same thing they did with Pina, where you're kind of losing stats where you'd want them and gaining them maybe where you don't want them in the Player of the Month. But it's worth saying that that Player of the Month, Yamal's only 300k compared to Pina. So... and is 90 rated, has got really decent stats. I think it's just, again, with him, and again, this probably talks to the price difference with Pina compared to Yamal. With Pina, there's a change in the playstyle plus. With Yamal, there isn't. And so you are effectively paying 250,000 coins over his base gold just for +1s in stats. It's not a huge upgrade. There's nothing remarkably different. He hasn't gone to 5-star, 4-star. He hasn't gained a playstyle, I don't think. And obviously his playstyle plus is the same. So interesting. I still don't think it's worth it. I think you'd be better. I think the kind of marginal gains that you would get with him, I'm not sure you're that much better off than just using his base card. If you wanted to use a Yamal, obviously, we've spoken on the pod before about we would pay for having dynamic images on players. And so maybe you want to do that. But I'm not sure 250k or 300k was where we were pricing those in our heads.
Yep. Yeah, that's very true. And actually, talking about those wingers, well, actually, I don't know, Pina's not necessarily a winger, but those sort of attacking positions, the Evos that are currently out are pretty good and so much cheaper than those player of the months, right? I know it's not fodder to complete them, but that's worth noting. Also, there's actually an SBC for a 5-star skill evolution, right?
Yes.
Which is
only 20k, I think.
Yeah, it's not too bad, 25k or something. And I think, I'm trying to remember what the max is. Is it 85, I think? Yeah, 85. So, yeah, not too bad. And I was actually also noticing the one Evo that probably is worth a quick mention is the Wizard, which is like a 40k.
The Wizard?
Yeah, or 400. Right, it's timed with, I'm sure, the Wicked release, right? I think that's the idea. But yeah, 40k, 400 FP, and also has like a Quick Step Plus edition, which is all right. But I think what's quite nice is it has the cam position added to the player, and that combines quite well, I guess, with the fact we have the Shadow Striker ++ role at the moment through Gauntlet, and you can obviously apply that before you do this Evo, so that you can then get that on the player before you do it. Because I think the roles wise, it only gives Classic 10 ++, which is just not a particularly good role in my opinion. So yeah. Worth looking at that, and then should we move on to talking about? We had a few. Yeah, go on. We can be like,
I think just two more things before we move on to comments, which maybe we'll do in the final section.
Yeah, true. A little break.
There's two more things I want to talk about. João Cancelo could have very easily been my pound for pound. I can't believe he's 23k for a player that's strong, that has the club link to Theo Hernandez. And so if you were going down the Ratty route, I think there's a good option there, and obviously both of their nations then are very good for linking. Tiki-Taka Plus and a fullback. I think the only other player with that has been the SBC 𝗪𝘀𝗪𝘀𝘀, who I really enjoyed using. And if you're someone who likes to use attacking roles on your fullbacks, or even I've seen a lot of inverted wing backs being used, like just because they then kind of sit in front of the wingers that people like to play as the outball. Having tiki-taka is going to be very useful there as well. Like really nice array of stats and stuff. If we get a special Theo Hernandez, you could see a little increase in João Cancelo as well. But I just think he'll be good anyway. And then final thing is I spoke about the fact that Thunderstruck's got their first upgrades recently. And I think I spoke on the pod about not having massive pack luck. The best bit of pack luck I had happened right at the end, and I got David Beckham's Thunderstruck icon. And in his upgrade, he got given Tiki-Taka, which made his card look a lot better than I think it had done before. And when I packed him, I'm pretty sure he was like 140k-ish. And at the moment, he's like high 200s, 280k. So he's almost doubled. It feels pretty much like because he got Tiki-Taka, which does make him, I think, a lot more usable in the way that the game's been played at the moment. So, yeah, and he's a lot of fun to use. So keep your eye out for some of those Thunderstruck upgrades. I know they were slightly underwhelming, but those base playstyles are a lot more valuable than they're ever given credit for.
Yeah, good point. And actually, shout out to the live upgrade hub on foot.gg. You can see the upgrades as they come in, and it will just say, Beckham got the tiki-taka playstyle or whatever, so you can see it straight away. And it's also notable, I was looking through, and they obviously gave out those boosts for screen players to hit to increase one of the stats to 99, but they also added the playstyle, the role pluses, or role pluses even. Really fumbled that, but yeah, they added the role pluses, and that's a role plus for basically every role they have. I think it's a lot. So if anyone wants a very versatile player, then maybe have a look at some of the screen players because they're pretty good.
And they did 99 stats in different stats than they did the first time, which I don't think many people were expecting.
I have to say. I called it on the pod.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
You have your connections, though, don't you?
And then, we should take a break, I think. We can come back and talk a bit about people's comments on the game modes at the moment, because I mentioned that it'd be interesting to hear from people, and then have not brought it up yet. So we'll bring it into this. We'll talk about what people are playing, because I think it's quite interesting at the moment with the amount of stuff that's going on. And we'll maybe talk a bit more about that and whether that's changed since we last spoke about it. So we'll do that right after this break. Hello and welcome back after break. Right, yes, as promised, let's bring in a few comments about what people are playing at the moment. It's quite interesting. I think we said before about the introduction of Gauntlet. We kind of slammed the silver mode. But yeah, we've had some comments. I think actually most people did agree that the silver mode is not, silver league, I guess it is, just isn't particularly enjoyable to play, even if the rewards are fairly strong. But actually, there's an argument that they're not even that amazing considering the amount of time it takes to play. For those, actually, it is quite a commitment. Plus, you've got to get the actual players as well. And we have more, actually, I think, since we last spoke. So we've had like Maradona added in, there's a Zico, there's a few others. And to be honest, I'm so down on that Silver League that probably the only reason I complete them is because at some point they might decide they're not going to lock them out of Evos, and you might be able to evolve them from there. But or they mess up like they did once, and then you'll be able to chuck them in an Evo. Because the Maradona, obviously has a lot. They have a lot of potential, right? Although actually the Conor Alberto with low driven plus, not sure about that, but could be kind of fun, I suppose. But anyway, let's talk about mode. So this is a bit of feedback we got as a result of mentioning that. Comments on YouTube, as mentioned previously, do comment on YouTube. We do read them all and we'll bring them in here or there. So Manib says, it really doesn't seem like you have to pick and choose which game modes you play because there's simply too many to play all of them. I missed Champs the weekend before last because I was so burnt out. I don't think I'll be playing the Silver Tournament because the first one in Season 1 was such a horrible experience, even though it was the main thing I was looking forward to in terms of gameplay, even before the game was released. And then he says, I bought the game specifically to build a team around 𝘂𝑪𝑚A, but EA is still holding him back. Well, there we go. He's now out. So hopefully you're enjoying him or waiting for him to drop, I hope, rather than enjoying him right now. And then, actually, I'll go on to Brad here. He says, I mostly stick to rivals and squad battles, dip into the odd tournament or Gauntlet here or there, but not every one of them. I dropped Champs a few years back, too toxic in the messages I'd get, and it would ruin my weekend, no matter how many wins I got. I found myself being moody towards friends and family because of it. So I guess, first of all, the Champs point, let's focus on, because I know you haven't been playing Champs either. They improved the rewards recently. Has that, and I think that was, that was after I think we spoke about whether you were playing Champs. But yeah, are you still not playing Champs, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still not playing Champs. And really, recently, it's more just been a time thing. I've just not had the time to, rather than I'm actively choosing not to. I've just had a few busy weekends in a row. I think I probably will do at some point when I get the time, but I'll probably play it in the same way that I have done in the past, which is, if I'm in a tough game, I'll just leave for people call them rage quits. I like to think of them as fun leaves. You just kind of, I don't know. We had that first to two game mode recently, and I almost wonder if there's kind of something in trying to play Champs like that, in that sense of if your opponent goes a few goals up, yeah, you might get back into it, but it might also frustrate you if you can't, and so just move on to the next one, especially if you're not kind of playing to just try and get as many wins as possible. If you're playing just to try and have fun, there's no real pressure. I think 9 wins is where you start getting promo cards, but how often do you get a good promo card from those rewards? I think 7 wins, for the time it takes, if you're someone who can get there relatively comfortably, I think the rewards are all right. And yeah, so from a Champs perspective, for me, it's probably one of those modes that's more if I have the time, I'll play it. It's above Rivals right now. I'll say that. I really, Rivals dropped out a good while ago. I also think there's kind of a weird thing at the moment where Champs matchmaking has, I think, been weird this year, and I don't know if it's looser. I don't know if there's if there's a different way that they've been doing it, but it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't feel as consistent, I think, as it has done in years gone by. And I also wonder if that's to do with Rivals in some respects, because I feel like Rivals is the same. You can be playing in Div 6 and 7 and playing against people with monster teams who are player lock-in and doing everything you've all of the kind of meta things. And you kind of message them going hey, what are you doing down here? And they're just I can't be bothered. I don't really play. And this, I'm just playing a few games to get Evos done or whatever it may be. So yeah, Champs is just one of those modes that I think it was I think it was brilliant and innovative when it first came out. And weirdly, I think if there was maybe more longer term rewards tied to champs, I'd be more inclined to play it on a kind of semi-regular basis because I'd be working towards that. I think just the immediacy of the rewards in the way that the current mode works is just, it makes the game more pressure than it makes it fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I wonder whether that, like, because I agree on the sort of weirdness of matchmaking at the moment, and I wonder whether that is partly actually because of the lack of kind of, the splintering, I guess, of players into the different modes, because then actually the pool of players within champs is perhaps just not big enough for them to be able to actually match you with people on your level. Like, they do seem to prioritize the speed of you finding a match versus how accurate that matchmaking is already. And people know that from just messaging opponents being like, oh, you know, what's your like form at the moment? And it'll be like quite different to theirs. So quite clearly they are happy to chuck you in a game with someone who's not kind of on the same level. I'm sure they try to, but often they don't. And so the fewer players who are actually playing, you know, the sort of extremes of both ends, I guess, probably kind of, yeah, like it's harder to find those to some extent. And so those people end up matching against people in the middle.
I will say, just on the point that was made around getting messages after games, turn the communications off for people that aren't your friends, because nobody's sending messages to say thank you. If you give someone a win, no one messages to go, cheers for that kind of thing. Or like, it's very, very rare. So most of the time it's going to be a message that's that's like frustrated or angry or rubbing it in. You know, I may have got a warning from PlayStation Network, not because of a champs game, because of a rush partner that I had, who was probably the most infuriating player I've ever played with. You know, I probably deserved my temporary. Well, no, I didn't get a ban. I just got a warning. But he was a waste of oxygen for those 5 minutes.
I actually got a message from a guy only last weekend saying, I really like how you dribble. How do I do it? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what you mean.
not all of us are that skilled, you know.
I said, listen to the FUT Weekly podcast and you'll probably never find out because I can't explain that on a pod. Actually, to be fair, I have explained it a few times. I think a lot of it's doing technical dribbling and adding a few skill moves. And also little right stick flicks. Very helpful. More of that on the gameplay podcast this week, which is a supporter episode. So, you know, head over to Patreon or search support FUT Weekly to become a supporter. Yes, anyway, talking about this, yeah, I've been playing champ still, but as you say, I think like it is competing, or the other things are competing more and more. One of the things that because I just find rivals, I've always found it very dry and not been particularly compelled to play it. One of the things that makes it champs awkward at the moment is having to get the points to qualify, because you've got to play some rivals games to get there. And because I haven't really been pushing rivals, it means that I'm not in a very high division, and so that means I'm getting points kind of slowly. So yeah, and it also means I'm playing people who are definitely not, you know, I'm not deliberately smurfing or anything, but like I clearly am finding it too easy in rivals. So I think there is some weirdness going on because of that, and I think that is probably in a way testament to the fact that people are enjoying the other things they've added into the game, like Gauntlet. And I think Gauntlet's probably one of the bigger ones, but I think they've also done some good live events, like live event tournaments. And yeah, we had that one, which is like first to 2 goals, right? Recently, which was very good for completing Evos, which is quite handy because there was a lot of Evos to do. But yeah, did you like that kind of as a concept generally?
I liked, yeah. I mean, yes, right. Okay, so there's multiple aspects to come at this from, and I think it's caused an interesting like discussion within the community. Of
do we have to do a little? We're doing an EA focus group warning because people sometimes don't like that.
It's
the end of the
going
podcast
meta
anyway.
And talking about the community.
Yeah.
But the fact that people could complete pretty much all of their Evos, and they could do it by giving people wins, because you could just score 2 own goals and it would count as playing because you're not scoring the third that means that you've quit. People were able to just race through evolutions. And we had a lot because it had been Black Friday. So, you know, there had been a lot of evolutions about. What that I think kind of led to then is the splintering you talked about. I think there was a splintering then of people who had felt like, okay, I've now done all of the things I had to do, and now I'm not going to play. And there was a group of people who were like, okay, now I've finished all my Evos, let me go and play with them. And I think is an interesting split between the two. I think the more interesting discussion is maybe about the game mode itself and what it allowed people to do, which was to kind of play the like battle royale kind of game where it was like you just drop in. If you're like too good, you're going to win quickly, out you go into the next game. If you're too bad, you're going to lose quickly, out you go into the next game. If you're evenly matched, you're going to be in the game a little bit longer and it's going to be a bit of back and forth. But if you lose that tight game, it doesn't matter. You're in the next one. And I think there was something in that. You know, we've spoken before, I think, about reducing half lengths. And whilst I understand for like pro gaming and for the high level gaming, people like kind of longer games. I think for the mass market and for the way that media is going and entertainment's going, you've got to try and shorten it down a little bit. I think if halves were 1 minute shorter, but maybe 2 minutes shorter, I think I honestly wonder if people would have a little bit more fun in the game, because it means that you wouldn't be kind of sat with a loss for as long before you could potentially get a win, which I think is maybe like, you know, if someone's determined to stay in the game, in a game you're better than them in, you are also sat in that for 15 minutes of like, I don't know, just scoring or just holding the ball because you just want the game to be over. And that's not a satisfying experience, I don't think, as much as just, you know, blitzing someone, the game's over and you're into the next one. So yeah, like I thought it was an interesting mode. I would like to see it more often, but I have a feeling that if we saw it more often, it would come with a caveat that you like that evos couldn't be completed in it, because I don't know that that's what they want. I think they like the idea that if you do evos, you're kind of tied into playing the game a certain amount until that expires.
Yeah, it is a shame because, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like if people really just want to go through evos rather than focusing on anything else, maybe that is kind of fine. Like, I don't know, just let people kind of do what they want to do to some extent. If they want to accelerate that by scoring own goals and getting, you know, they're not progressing right towards rewards, they're just doing their evos.
Oh, I agree. Like, I completely agree.
Yeah. But it's worth it. I mean, it's actually worth saying in terms of tips from this, because obviously, you know, we don't want to just EA focus group. Do look out for these things because they can be quite useful if you're trying to finish an Evo quickly. And I think I actually probably would have struggled to finish some of those on time if it wasn't for that. So it's worth noting that. I would also say, I think there is probably a direction that EA could go here, which is very much splitting things, you know, kind of, I know they've already done the competitive gameplay versus authentic gameplay, but essentially you know, within Ultimate Team having very much casual play, or kind of, I guess you can call it the TikTokification of Ultimate Team game modes, where you have very, very short, or not very, very short, but quite short games, where, there is a win motivation, but it's not necessarily the kind of, it's not as, it doesn't feel as crucial because you have the opportunity to go into a game again quite quickly to get that win. Or it's stuff like, you know, I don't know, Gauntlet to some extent, because obviously that is, you know, you can complete most of that stuff without actually getting the wins, because there's the score in X and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of part of that. And then you can, although that's an interesting one because it kind of bridges both, because you can also play it more competitively to try and get the actual wins. Although actually, that's a weird one as well, because just going through them, because actually you can just keep playing it, right? Like there are not enough, at the moment at least, there aren't limited enough entries to Gauntlet to really make it feel that competitive, apart from the fact that you have the thing where you could not get some of the rewards without winning 3 games in a row, and that, I guess, is what makes that a more competitive thing than those tournaments that you were talking about, which I think there's definitely a place for that, for sure. And it's nice for people who maybe want to dive into Gauntlet and they might not get the 3 wins, but they might get the 3 wins, and it becomes kind of a bonus if they do. I think that's kind of good. But yeah, I think they need to, but what I was coming on to saying, actually, went a bit deep into it, is they need to think a lot more about Rivals and Champs moving forward, because frankly, I think it is losing a lot of its player base. It's always been an issue that it kind of cannibalizes, because people who are at the bottom end don't want to play no matter what the rewards are, if every game is going to be a loss. So I think, or they're only going to get a couple of wins max. So I think that is something that needs to be thought about a bit more. And also similar with Rivals, I guess. I kind of wish, rather than doing the stuff they'd done more recently to kind of revamp them, they'd just kind of completely redid it and rebranded. And maybe that would have been more compelling, even if it hadn't been kind of complete, wholesale changes.
They have the rights, and I'm surprised they've not called it the Champions League and just amalgamated division rivals and champs into one week-long mode. Because that I think the fact that champs is like Friday to Monday, I'm not saying that it's necessarily like that's quite a long period of time, right? It's not the weekend league anymore, and it's only 15 games. So I think in the old days, like the fact that it was 40 games over 48 hours just meant like it was insane and sweaty, and you were just like on to the next, and you were getting rage quits because it was like who's got time to get through 40 games. But it also meant that the matchmaking was more drawn out, and you would have maybe more balanced matchmaking than you do in 15 games. I just wonder if the fact that you've now got division rivals, that's a week-long thing where you have a number of games to get a points total, and now essentially a 4-day mode in champs to play 15 games. I don't think there's any need for them to be separate modes. And I think if you combined the rewards, I think everyone would then play it, because you could stretch out the rewards more because it's over a week. You could have people in different divisions, or you could have whatever it may be. But I just like maybe... I think we now have too many modes.
Yeah.
And maybe now it's a reduction. Or maybe that's what EA want. They want so many modes that it's like, okay, pick your poison, choose what you want to do. But my worry with that is you can't keep adding modes on top of that, because eventually there's not enough people in those modes to play them to the point where your matchmaking is going to be bad. Or like, so yeah, I think they've hit on a few good ideas this year. I think bounties are a great idea, because that idea of you could be working towards something without having to win, feeling like you're still getting something. I think that's really good. And I think they've hit that balance as well in Gauntlet, where it forces you to use different teams, but also you don't have to win to get a lot of good rewards. It's a bonus if you do, which is, I think, how it should be.
Yeah, I think that's well summarized. I think the final thing I'd say, just as a closing point, I'd be interested to hear listener thoughts, YouTube comments, etc. about this, because it's something I've puzzled over for a while, is like, I genuinely think that for me, red picks were a motivating factor in playing champs to some extent. And I don't know if that's nostalgia or there's actually something to it, but I just don't find that the champs Evos, cosmetic things, like do it for me in the same way, or I find as compelling, even though they are still a flex, right? They're the same in flex. They're more flexible because you can put them on basically any player in your team, right? So you'd think they'd be fulfilling the same role, but actually just something about chasing like a specific player with a unique shell that you might never come across, actually, to be fair. Some of those, like, you might not ever play against them. There was something quite kind of special about that. And also now, obviously, not all Evos change the rarity, as in change the design on the card. So there's sort of a way to maintain the design as well through doing that. So I don't know, would you agree with that before we go? Like, do you think that they were actually a factor in playing champs?
Yeah, I think reds definitely are one factor. To be honest, I know that they were mostly bad, but there was something about monthly rewards that I think had a little bit of that brought people back, that kept you playing, that was like, again, that working longer term towards a goal. I also think instant rewards is bad for the game.
Yeah.
I don't think you should get your rewards straight away. I think having a rewards day made a massive difference, because it was like everyone was opening them at the same time. What did you get in yours? Now it's spread out over, are you an absolute psycho who gets it done by like 11 on Friday? Or are you someone who leaves it till the last minute? And it's all spread out now. And yeah, I also, to go into like an even more meta conversation about content, I just think everyone's seen everything now because of share plays, because of how many 15 and O's people have seen. It's like, what do you have to get now for your champs rewards to just be mind blowing? It's not possible, because we've seen it all. So I think there's maybe a couple of aspects to it where it just doesn't have that same magic, and I think that's maybe a bit of a theme for a lot of the game at the moment, or at least how I'm feeling about it.
Well, let's hope they can sprinkle some Christmas magic over the festive period. And we will leave this podcast here. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone for joining us. If you would like, as I said, an extra episode every week, including this week's gameplay episode, then you can become a supporter over on Patreon, just £3 a month for double the podcast content. And then, of course, if you're just listening and would like more of the content on the main feeds and on YouTube, etc., just subscribe. And then you can also drop a like, leave a comment on YouTube. That is greatly appreciated. But yeah, thank you very much, Josh, for joining us on this one.
Yeah, and as we're recording, Manchester United have been playing for 12 minutes and we're not losing yet. So, yay!
It's going well, despite the same defence that... anyway.
Yeah.
But yes, and we should say thank you very much to all those supporters for supporting the podcast, keeping it going. It is greatly appreciated. And a big thank you to those icon patrons.
Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.